Well, let's get more now. We can speak to General Joseph Votel, who's a retired four-star general and former commander of U.S. Central Command. He joins us from Minnesota. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us, General Votel. Just before we talk about Ukraine, I just want to ask you briefly, since we were talking about it with our earlier guests, I mean, how fragile is the ceasefire in the Middle East looking to you right now?
Well, I think first of all, it's good to be with you, Tom. And I mean, I think the situation is fragile. I think it always has been fragile. Certainly, there was some progress made, over the last 10 days as we've kind of got to this agreement. And there's been some things that have been done: the return of hostages, return of hostage remains, the removal of some IDF forces from Gaza. But I think the challenge here is while we've overcome one important milestone here, there's a lot more to be done, and I think that kind of highlights the fragility of this. Whether it's the disarmament of Hamas, whether it's any of the demilitarization that has to take place, the transition, the delivery of humanitarian aid, all of these are very, very complicated things, and they're likely to take time, and they're going to take even more time in a very difficult situation like Gaza right now.
Thank you for that, General Votel. Let's talk about Ukraine now. It appears, and many people in Ukraine are speculating, that President Zelensky left his talks with President Trump on Friday more or less empty-handed. He didn't appear to get the Tomahawk missiles that he wanted. I mean, is that how it looks to you? And how much of a setback do you think those talks were for President Zelensky?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly there had been a lot of talk in this country about the potential of providing Tomahawk missiles to the Ukrainians so that they could use them for their own defense and shoring up their operations. So I think there was some expectation that was going to take place. Of course, the dynamics around all of this negotiation, all of the activities taking place at a very high level, I think have come to be seen here. President Trump is clearly talking to both sides and influenced by both sides, and it appears that he is, maybe has stepped back from that original inclination to provide them there, to see if there's another way that this situation could be resolved. So yeah, I'm sure this is very disappointing for the Ukrainians, and again, I think it might be a little bit confusing on the strategic front in terms of where we actually stand with all this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks and sounds like a dramatic change of heart because, according to the Financial Times, President Trump warned President Zelensky that Putin would destroy Ukraine if he didn't agree to Moscow's terms. And then only last month, we heard President Trump saying that Russia was actually a little bit of a paper tiger, and said that Kyiv could win back all of its territory and get Ukraine back in its original form. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic change of heart, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we seem to be moving back and forth between several different end states here that we're focused on. I think it is important in the final analysis to have some strategic continuity, to have some strategic predictability in terms of what our policy looks like. Again, I'm not in the room. I'm not seeing everything. Most of us are not. So I don't know what all the machinations are that are taking place. Certainly, I think the president is talking to both sides and trying to see where he can get the best deal, and I think that involves putting pressure in both directions here with respect to that. So yes, I would agree that it does appear to be a little bit unpredictable here.
I mean, would the Tomahawks have perhaps had the effect of getting the Russians to the negotiating table slightly quicker or on slightly different terms?
Well, I mean, this is a pretty significant weapon system here that can travel a long way and can do some significant damage when it arrives. So the threat of those, the actual employment of those, could certainly have an impact. I think it's always important to appreciate that military means by themselves, without diplomacy, without the information aspects of things, without economic aspects, all of these will likely come up short. So what we really have to do is, these are great weapon systems. They can certainly do a lot. They can help the Ukrainians. But what we really need is we need to bring all of our elements of power together to really create the biggest cumulative effect that we can.
So, I mean, it looks now as though sort of everyone's attention is turning towards Budapest, where there's going to be direct talks, we assume, between Presidents Trump and Putin. President Zelensky saying he could take part if he's invited to those talks. But just before we talk about those talks, does that mean, do you think, this is the end of the road for US military support for Ukraine?
I don't think so. We haven't really stopped any of the arms sales that we've been doing through NATO to get to Ukraine, and that does not appear to have been disrupted. We'll have to see what happens after this next round of high-level discussions here. But I mean, yeah, I think the president is, I think, trying to use all the means available to him, and he is at heart a business person, and that means talking face to face with people. So I think that's what he's attempting to do with all of this. You know, whether it will be successful or not, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, I mean, right now it appears that our military support in the way that it's being provided is continuing.
Do you see those talks happening, those three men sitting around the table, or do you think it would be more of a case of shuttle diplomacy between the two sides?
My personal belief, I think it will likely be shuttle diplomacy. I don't know that Mr. Putin is anxious to meet with President Zelensky. Perhaps he would be in the presence of President Trump as kind of a mediator between them. That certainly could be a possibility. I mean, we've seen extraordinary things over the last several months that have happened. So I don't want to dismiss anything. My gut feeling tells me that this will likely be like it was the last time. It'll be meetings with both sides in more of a shuttle diplomacy between the two of them.
And what do you think of the choice of the possible venue, Hungary? I mean, it's not exactly a neutral territory as far as Ukraine is concerned, is it?
Well, no, but you know, there are some limitations on where President Putin can travel, and so this may be one of the locations that he can get to. So I don't know all the machinations behind the selection of that particular location, but yeah, I take your point here that this has not been a country that's always been supportive of Ukraine, but it is one that is in a position to host this meeting between our president and Mr. Putin.
So basically, we've got the situation where the US is urging Ukraine to accept Russia's terms to end the war. And I'm just wondering what other parties will be thinking of that and how they'll be advising Ukraine. I mean, what's NATO going to say? What are the European allies going to say? I mean, how do they communicate that to Ukraine in the face of what it appears are zero concessions by the Russians?
Well, I would expect, like we saw the last time around when the president and Mr. Putin met in Alaska, that there will be on the sidelines of all of this, there will be meetings with our NATO partners and the European leaders, and with advice to President Zelensky, hopefully advice to our president as well, some input from them in terms of the considerations that ought to go into this discussion. I mean, I think everyone does recognize that ultimately right now, at least the end of this conflict will be reached through some form of mediation. Whether that involves giving up territory or something else, I think that's all to be decided. I think the Europeans, certainly the NATO, has been very pro-Ukraine and is very keen for them not to give up any type of their terrain or land. So you know, we'll see where that goes. I mean, these are really difficult challenges here, and of course the president is stepping into this, trying to bring some coherence around an approach to this, and I'm sure he'll be getting input from a lot of different sides, and a lot of that input will most undoubtedly be conflicting with each other.
General Votel, we heard from Britain's most senior military officer, Field Marshal Lord Richard, saying that Ukraine cannot win this war with Russia, and said that Ukraine should negotiate peace. I mean, is that how it looks to you? And what's your assessment of what's actually happening on the battlefield right now?
Well, my assessment is that neither side is in a position to exact a military victory in this. I mean, it's been stalemated. There's been some gains by the Russians here, and certainly some of their attacks across Ukraine have been pretty devastating to the infrastructure. But Ukraine has also exacted some costs on Russia as well, and so neither side can get to a decisive point. And that was my point earlier: is eventually this is going to have to be negotiated and mediated out, and it's going to be a discussion that ends this, not necessarily a fight here. The Ukrainians are up against a lot of challenges. They are a smaller country population-wise. They are very dependent upon NATO and the United States and others for a lot of their material, and there's some challenges with getting all of that to them. The Russians, on the other hand, are making use of Iranian drones, are making use of North Korean soldiers and North Korean artillery, and they've kind of got the acquiescence of China in supporting this. So both sides have had some challenges associated with all of that. Neither can achieve a military victory at this point. So yes, I think at some point there is going to have to be a negotiation. I think what we're really talking about are what is the framework for that? Does it involve giving up terrain? Is it pulling forces back? Does it include some force in between? I mean, there's a whole bunch of possibilities of this. So I think the conflict is going to end around a table. It's not going to end around a military engagement.
But when people in the United States and in Europe say, look, Ukraine's not our national interest, it's not our national interest, this is Ukraine's national interest, and therefore we have to, take a step back and walk away. I mean, handing victory to the Kremlin isn't just handing victory to the Kremlin, it's also North Korea for some of the military hardware and some of the soldiers on the ground, we understand. It's handing military victory as well, to a certain extent, to Iran, which has been providing some of the drones as well, we're told. I mean, there are broad-reaching implications, aren't there? And not least for Ukraine's neighbors that must be wondering whether it'll be their turn next.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think this is in our national interest. And, as a member of NATO, we certainly have to appreciate the impact that a Russian victory of some sorts in Ukraine would mean for others. I mean, there are other countries there that are in a position where they can very easily be threatened by the Russian juggernaut, so to speak, and so they have to pay attention to that. I do think it's in our interest to make sure that this is resolved in a way that doesn't necessarily reward Russia for their aggressive actions in initiating this war, and that continues to stabilize NATO and send the message that this will not be tolerated. I think we've seen over the last couple months when we saw some incursions of Russian jets into NATO airspace, a very strong response from the NATO countries. So they are definitely on arm, and they understand, I think, what Mr. Putin is up to, and that his goals perhaps don't end with Ukraine, but really end in a much more broader fashion with trying to reestablish the empire that they previously had under the Soviet Union. So I think these are significant interests that are at stake, not just for NATO, but to include the United States here in Eastern Europe.
And just lastly, General Votel, just to wrap up with a comment from that same senior military man I was talking about just a moment ago, Field Marshal Lord Richards. He said, what we have done is, in the case of Ukraine, is to encourage Ukraine to fight, but not given them the means to win. He went on to say that Ukraine's allies have failed Ukraine. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I certainly understand that position. I think we've been overly deliberative over a number of years now in terms of the equipment, the provisioning of stuff that we're giving to them, the limitations we put on them for the employment of some of the systems that have been provided to them. I think these all don't help Ukraine in the long run. I think we've been reluctant to put our the most devastating financial sanctions on Russia. I think we kind of need to be all in on this. And if we really want Ukraine to prevail in this, we need to give them all the tools that they require, and we need to take the handcuffs off them in terms of this. And that, I think, has been a problem. I mean, there certainly are some considerations that had to be taken into consideration. Nobody wanted to get a broader war going here, but in terms of doing that, our approach to that has really, I think, come at the detriment of Ukraine. So yes, I agree with with the field marshal on that. We needed to provide them with the tools up front and allow them to do what they needed to do.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. General Joseph Votel. Thank you, sir.
Good to be with you. Thank you.